what did you think about the character arcs and how the story progressed?
Yeah, and to me, I think we've talked about this before, where this is about as good as a second season or a sequel kind of thing can go because they really dug deeper into these characters. And damn it, man.
I'm sorry. You just said, I think we've talked about this before, and I just wanted to say, yeah, two other times. It just came to my head, and then I couldn't. Oh, shit.
All right, well, that's
Okay, this has to be the last one.
4 minutes down the drain.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Illiterate Book Club. I'm Matt.
And I'm John.
And this is our Stranger Things Chapter 2. It's kind of a little bit of a refresher, but also some anticipation for where the series is going as a whole. So starting us off, what was your reaction to the higher production values between this season and the last season?
I liked them. I mean, they obviously put a lot of money into it. They obviously got, I think, a lot more money because of the success of season 1.
That's true.
And so we saw, a ton of CGI.
Yeah,
in
that's
this show.
one thing that was. I was a little bit back and forth about it, but I felt like it was necessary.
Right, because, I mean, you look in Chapter 1, or Season 1, whatever you want to call it, and you only had one monster. You did have, like, the portals, which were CGI when he was coming through the walls and stuff like that, but the actual monster there, fantastic practical effects.
Yeah.
But what, you begin with one baby Demogorgon that turns into end up being, like, dozens of them by the end of the show.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have the Mind Flayer and all of those effects, and just a bigger scale of special effects. So CGI is almost a necessity.
Yeah, and even more so, I guess, the one other thing that I feel like the added production level had was just the multiple locations they were able to. They had a lot more different scene changes and a lot more scenic views. Whether it was the adventure side or not, it was just so many different.
Yeah. The arcade.
It didn't feel the arcade. It didn't feel small like the train track scene even, which was really cool. And then of course we'll go into it with 11 later on.
Right, but I mean you only had her. You also had the Nancy and Jonathan went off.
Yeah.
There was leaving town a lot more in this.
Yeah,
this
so it's
season.
just a lot more locational changes, which was, I think, just kind of a byproduct of how successful the first season was.
Absolutely. So moving on from that, we can jump into those character arcs.
Right.
What did you like about these character arcs for season 2? Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. The character arcs, my favorite, I guess, character arc that was coming over from the first season was definitely Steve. And then his relationship with, is it Dusty or Dustin?
Dustin. Well, I mean, they probably call it Dusty.
Yeah. Well, but I thought it was really cool. We kind of touched on that with season 1, how he, at the end, he kind of starts to have this transformation, and you think he's just going to be this bully jock guy. But in this season, he's, fully fleshed out as, oh man, he really has a connection with, this young kid he's kind of mentoring now.
Right.
And he's really he's all about protecting them. You know what I mean? He's a really endearing character. And I think that for as far as like the leftover characters, he probably had the best story arc. Another one which you could probably dive into more for me would be 11 and Hopper. They're kind of
right.
Forth.
And so that was an interesting part because we leave season 1 thinking that 11 might be dead.
Yeah,
we really don't know what happened to her. We have that kind of glimpse of Hopper putting the Eggos out in the woods, and that kind of gives us a hint maybe she's still there or she's not dead completely. Yeah. But we don't really see that until we actually get into this season. Mm-hmm. And then we see that Hopper's got her in a cabin, kind of kept away, safe, and there's this great dynamic with those two actors, the two characters. He wants to keep her safe. Obviously, we saw in the first season he had lost a daughter, and his life really was a wreck after that. Mm-hmm. And now he has like another chance to play father figure to this girl who really needs help.
Yeah, and I think that kind of shows as he's being almost overly protective.
Right. He won't let her leave.
Yeah.
He is very strict, and she's getting impatient the whole time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think the biggest thing would be not telling the friends. That was kind of hard. That to me was almost a little bit on the overprotective side. Everything else was complete necessity.
Right.
As far as like, okay, the government's after her. If they find her, they're probably going to take her back to the lab and experiment and do whatever they're going to do.
Right.
But not allowing her to have those interactions with her friends, I think that's what kind of maybe pushed her over the edge a little bit.
Absolutely. And then you have that great sort of standalone episode. I mean, people debate it, but I liked it, of her finally getting out of the house, and she goes off, and first she reunites with her mother and her aunt, but then that doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
And she ends up going to find one of her sister.
Doesn't her mother call the people on her, like to come?
The aunt.
The aunt.
The aunt calls and expresses concern, but the aunt we saw from the first season doesn't really buy into the conspiracy.
Okay.
So she doesn't really think that the government's doing all these things that her sister and Hopper even suggested that was happening.
Yeah.
And so when she makes the call, Eleven decides she doesn't need to stay there anymore. But she also has a mission. She has this long lost sister in the sense of the other experimented person.
And I think we'll touch on that really quick in a second, because I think that's really where things may progress in the future. Back to one more character, I feel like one of my favorite characters, which was a new character, was I can't think of the actual character's name, but the guy who played Rudy, he was in a lot of the 80s shows.
Oh, Sean Astin.
And what was his character name? Do you remember?
You're going to say it, and I'm going to forget it.
Bob or something?
Bob.
Okay, cool.
Bob. Yeah, it was Bob.
Yeah, I thought he was such a great character, and it played so perfect, because in the beginning, you kind of like, okay, is he too nice? Is he like a spy or something?
Too good.
Yeah, and you, I think you were talking off camera about the interaction that he had with Will, kind of like pushing him to stand up.
Right, because Will this whole season has had these flashes into the Upside Down and seeing this Mind Flayer monster character. And Bob is trying to be a good role model, a good sort of mentor, and thinks he's having bad dreams. And so he tells him this really interesting story, but shot in a really creepy way.
Yeah.
I mean, because the cameras are like kind of crooking into him a little bit as he's like telling the story about how he stood up against this clown in his nightmares, saying go away, and that ends up obviously leading into Will trying to do the same thing with the Mind Flayer, who then
to not so much
and ends up the Mind Flayer possesses him,
right.
But that also is a catalyst to other parts of the story getting developed,
which is like kind of, I feel like after you find out, okay, this guy is literally just this nice, you know, I mean, after that stuff happens, I feel like he has one of the coolest arcs, being a hero and going out that way.
Yeah, and he's like one of the best like nerd heroes,
right?
Because he works at Radio Shack, of all places. He was the original founder of the AV club, at the school, And then on top of that, like he's the reason they figure out what the drawings are that Will's doing, right? He figures out that this is like a hidden roadmap to the town.
Okay,
and without being told anything. And it was like a really great scene with like him running around like looking at all these drawings stretched throughout the house.
Yeah.
And every time he kind of looks for sort of some further explanation from anybody, they're just sort of like, no, you're just this is what you got.
Yeah.
But he figures it out.
And I loved the ending part for him where he, obviously he dies.
Right. But in sacrifice.
Right, in sacrificial way, and he like really saved the day. He really does.
Right.
I guess we can kind of jump back to that episode with 11, talking about her sister, because I would believe that that's going to be a lot of people, I think you said this earlier, like was somewhat standoffish with that episode, and I was included in one of those. I was like, what is this? It just kind of felt a little odd, but I feel like it was a necessary episode for what's coming up ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, for one, within the season itself, it does show us a progression with 11 developing her powers a little bit and connecting both with someone else with powers, but also just someone who acts as that sort of teacher to push her to where she needs to be for the end of this season.
Yeah.
But then we find out, like, not only do we have this sister and possibly other people who had been a part of this program, but we found out the reveal that Papa, the Dr. Brenner character, may not actually be dead like they thought, like we thought. You know, he appears to be eaten by the Demogorgon at the end of season 1, and now we find out that he survived somehow.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to play into the idea that maybe, like, he's sometimes kind of have like almost like a symbiotic relationship with them or something. You know what I mean? Like, where maybe he becomes part of the other side. I don't know. I don't know.
It's going to be a really weird. I mean, there's a lot of weird experimentation that he's involved with, so there could be something involved with that.
Or like, oh, you've helped bring us to this world. Now we'll use you or something. You know what I mean? I don't know.
There's a lot of open ground for this, and so I suspect in this next season we'll find out more about him, his work, and just the sort of how far it reaches.
Right. I think it will continue going more towards the action side of everything. I think that, you know, you'll definitely get more of the supernatural elements as far as like, I mean, obviously there's supernatural in all the seasons, but I mean, as far as like almost like the X-Men type.
The powers. Finding out who has powers. You know, maybe there's some people who aren't good.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, you could say the sister wasn't really a good person, but she was justifiably angry.
Without going any spoilers on that other show, I almost feel like it's going to go towards the Umbrella Academy type.
Oh, way. Yeah, I could see that, where you have like a small family. That's if that's a show we could talk about again on a future video, but that is a good comparison, I think. Of you have a collective of powered individuals.
So I guess to wrap this thing up, just quickly, I mean, what do you think as far as did you like it as good as the first one, or what are your pros and cons?
I mean, as this to me is one of the best follow-up kind of seasons to any show I've seen, and so I don't know if I would. I'm not going to put it above season 1.
Right.
Season 1 is just so remarkable and so good, and it sets the groundwork.
Yeah.
But I put it up there really close.
Yeah, and I think that's where it kind of lost for me. I think I'd have the first one a little bit ahead of it because you have that mystery element, a little bit more horror. Because you just don't know what's going on. Right. It's a little creepier. There's a lot of like just shadows moving, things like that.
It's also a lot more focused. This second season obviously adds more characters, but breaks those characters apart a little more.
Yeah.
Anytime that happens, you obviously don't have as strong of focused of a story.
Right.
But I don't think they overdid it with the character arcs and how they had different plot lines moving simultaneously.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, you hated to see that group break up, but I think they knew, I'm pretty sure it was already announced that there would be a 2 and 3, so a season 2 and 3. So I think that they knew that they had to divide them up to maybe bring like at the very end of this last episode, they kind of bring them all back together, and now they have the added girl, which will be a whole nother conflict.
Yeah, and I'm anticipating more new characters in this season 3, as well as just some more interesting stuff going on. There's a mall. I don't know if you've seen the trailers that have been out.
I haven't seen the trailers.
Yeah, there's a trailer, so there's a mall in Hawkins now.
Okay.
And so they're going to do some mall culture scenes, which ought to be good, which that's been a great one. Just to touch on that as we wrap up is how they've incorporated different elements of 80s culture into each season of the show. I mean, the first season we obviously had the D&D, the music, the sort of just the E.T. kind of element of it, where you have the kids with the alien, almost 11 as the alien,
even switching the channels.
Yeah. And then in season 2 you had the arcade, you had the skater, the punks, and you have some really great like references, especially for those of us who grew up either sort of within the 80s or just after the. I mean, we're all exposed, like influenced by that culture.
Right, absolutely, still to this day. What did you think of season 2? Let us know in the comments below. Are you really excited? Where do you think that the season's going to go or the series is going to go for the next chapter? Appreciate you sticking with us. Be sure to like and subscribe. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.